You just tuned in to Up for Discussion. All right, here we are. We're live. If we can get Doug to quit talking for a few seconds.
That ain't happening, right?
That's right.
Nope. Good luck.
He's been up for discussion since he was born. So, all right, we are here tonight, episode 21. I just got turned down in my ears, but episode 21, everybody. And tonight we're going to be looking at patterning giants.
Was that biblical giants or
Yeah.
Well, giant bucks.
giant bucks?
Giant bucks.
Gotcha.
Does everything look good? Have you guys tested the audio? Sounds good. All right. We're getting thumbs up from the guys in the back. So tonight we're excited to have Derek Lee on the podcast. Derek is known around the county as a killer of mature bucks. And we feel like he's got some things to enlighten us on. So before we get too far going, I want to make sure everybody likes, shares, comments. If you guys get a chance this evening, make sure you do all those things. Help us promote this. And not only that, but lets us know who's watching. This evening's episode is sponsored by Ultra Products. And it's also sponsored by Icon Foam and Gutter. Icon Foam and Gutter here, located in Fairfield, Illinois. They provide great foam and gutter.
I know those guys. They are awesome.
Yeah. So
They'll
if you're,
treat you good. They'll
that's
treat
right.
you right.
If you're in need of insulation in any kind of pole barn, new construction, Icon Foam and Gutter can take care of all your foam needs.
Existing attics.
Yeah. Those are not as fun, but give Doug a call. Doug, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, if you've got an existing attic, maybe be slow about it.
No hurry, because it's getting hot. If you do them now, it wouldn't be that bad.
You know, you can find us on Facebook, or you could call me at 618-926-1481, and we could sort the whole thing out.
There you go.
Awesome.
Or if you just want to talk.
He's good at talking.
If you're sitting at home on a Friday night, you're looking for somebody to talk to.
Okay, no, I will change that number.
It's a good chance you're going to need a new phone after tonight.
Hey, the old cricket's not going to
There
work
you
out.
go. Yeah, that's right. It won't work anyway.
Hey, Nathan, what you got there? That's a nice hat.
That's a nice hat.
You want to tell us about that?
This hat is Ultra Products. What's it say? I can't remember. Something about the veins. Ultra Veins.
Ultra Veins.
I may not have my story 100% right. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to get him to turn my ears up, and apparently
Yeah.
we're cross. Our wires
Dealing
are
with ears.
There you go. That's
But
better.
anyhow, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but what little bit I know that Ultra Products got started, one of the things that helped them get started was Gordon, the original Ultra Products, what would he be? Owner and
Yeah.
founder, started by making veins, Ultra Veins. And then it evolved into more of a, and if I'm wrong on that, somebody out there, you feel free to correct me
No, that's definitely correct.
to some degree,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Because
So this
whenever we
hat
bought it, she still had the current, or I say current, she had the old vein,
Jig,
press. Yeah.
dye and press.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this hat says Ultra Veins, found it in the back. Like to pull out the vintage stuff and
Yeah.
wear it.
You sure do. Mark Phillips.
You're looking
He
extra
wants
old
one of
today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I have to wear a hat, because my hair is officially almost white now. So it's
Yeah.
about like Doug's beard.
Oh, hey. So we got to do the beard color thing, but I know nothing about it. But I know someone who does.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Join the club, man.
Yeah. See, Jenny.
Hair Club for Men.
Yeah.
Oh
Jenny
no,
Lee.
that's your group, right? Hair Club for Men.
Stop. Here
All
we
right.
go.
What are we talking about?
Tonight we're talking about patterning giants. Yeah, that's right.
Explain for our crowd what patterning.
Well,
Pitter patter.
Bitter pattern giants.
so I feel like there's a lot of guys who can go out and can kill an immature buck.
Yeah, I've done it.
But sure,
I can
we all
prove it.
have. But to truly follow a deer is a different thing. And I feel like Derek has definitely done that repeatedly. And because of that, I feel like he's a good source for that.
Yeah, well, the proof's in the eating of the pudding, I've always heard.
Yeah.
Mm.
The saying, the proof's in the pudding, doesn't hold up, because if you won't eat it, the proof's in the eating of the pudding.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah. People say it's proof's in the pudding. Well, then you go ahead and eat it. And if they say no, the proof's not in it. If you'll eat it, then it's proved that it's good to eat.
Okay.
That hat may be affecting your judgment.
Or it's putting off something that's blocking you guys' receivers.
Ooh.
So, Derek, you've been at this for how long? How long you been hunting?
I started hunting in 98
98.
by myself.
Yeah.
Before that, I hunted with my dad. And I remember him taking me out in the woods and putting me in a stand and just leaving me. And he would go, 50 or 100 yards down, and he'd come get me at dark. And that's how I got started.
Yeah.
But I've been obsessed with it for as long as I can remember. I mean,
So when you started, were you as obsessed as you are now, or?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've always been. I mean, just driving around looking for deer when I was little was just the most awesome thing.
Yeah.
It's the highlight of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was
I
the
mean,
same way.
We call it a deer run. We'd go on a deer run the last hour of the day and
Yep.
just drive around and look at deer. And
Do you still do deer runs?
yeah, but not like we used to. But
Yeah.
in the summertime, yeah.
Do you feel like deer runs help hone basically keeping track of those big bucks?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely does, because they're very visible at the end of summer.
Yeah.
July and August, they're pretty easy to find and pretty predictable. And a lot of times I'll use a deer run to figure out where to put a camera.
Okay. So right now, how many bucks would you say you have as target bucks?
Probably 10 to 15 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Significant.
Yeah.
And when you say a target buck, what would that look like for you?
For me, I'm looking for 4-year-olds or older. You know, and preferably over 140, but sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
Some of them never will be.
So
but
it's primarily about age.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's changed over the years. Used to it was all about a certain inches,
Yeah.
and I've kind of changed that over the years. But,
Well, tell us about that. Why?
They're harder to come by for one.
Yeah.
Used to, you could find a 150, 160 on about any country block.
Yeah.
And they're getting more rare. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
I would say primarily from what I see in your area, I think certainly has this is a lot. There's not enough of them reaching the age
Yeah.
to get to that size.
It's gotten pretty hard to find a 4-year-old.
So that being the case, patterning a giant is a whole lot more difficult then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some respects, although if you do find one, it might be the one. You might, and if you can keep up with that deer, if he does something that you can keep up with, that your job isn't that you need to find 10 of them, because there aren't 10 of them out there. There might be only a couple 5+-year-old deer, and where
It seems like there's a lot of 130 mature deer that slip through because they're not big and people aren't shooting them.
right.
So if that's the case, well, I'm not sure where I was going with that. I had a direction that I was thinking, but
It's almost like the deer with the good genetics don't live as long.
Right.
Yeah.
is what
They
I'm
look
saying.
good too early.
They look good too early and they get killed at 2 and 3.
have you experienced finding one in a place where very few people knew where he was?
Yeah.
Or do you feel
It seems like they're in the spots you wouldn't think of. That's
is that most of the time, or
a lot of the time,
yeah?
especially in the summer. They're out in the middle of a field on a ditch.
Yeah.
Most ones I find are out in the open.
Yeah, it seems like me and Lathan in our hunting, that's been the case for us as well. Like, find a small little patch that you think nobody's going to want to go in that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it will hold a bigger deer than what, you think.
Yeah.
There's another aspect of that too that takes years to really develop. But say a particular deer is doing something a little unusual in terms of what the rest of the deer do. So nobody's there looking for him. So he survives. He makes 5-6 years old. So now you've got this big buck that's out there in an area that you wouldn't suspect he'd be in, just because he happened to choose early on in life to live there, not because he thought it out. Oh man, I'll go way out there.
He got lucky of where he
his
home to be.
Exactly. And so then in other areas nearby, there are certain deer doing that too. So we then develop this thing where we're like, hey, well, those deer, they just choose to live where there's these unusual places. And I don't know it's that they do that later in life. I think they've grown up in a spot that was kind of off the beaten path a little bit, sometimes just overlooked, not even so much deep in the middle of nowhere, just overlooked. So I think some of that is not so much that they got old and smart and said, I'm going to go out there. They've probably always done that. And so now we've got seemingly the only real big deer we're seeing are in those overlooked places.
Well, I think that proves itself. Like, Georgia's not known as a huge producer of, what do we want to say?
Boone and Crockett.
Yeah,
Right,
Boone and
right.
Crockett's, yeah. But around Atlanta, in the suburbs, they kill them like crazy.
Giants, like even 200.
Yeah, and part of that is because they've been overlooked, I'd say.
Yeah.
By a lot of people. Now there's certain groups out there that's exposing that, and I'm sure now everybody is wanting to be an urban hunter or whatever, but if you go out in the docks and the boondocks, Georgia's not known.
No,
for
not
Boone
not
and Crockett
really.
class bucks. I'm sure there's one over here and one over there, and it's because they get hammered. And they've hidden in those little lots, and people probably didn't hunt next to
or would
in
even
the
think to.
suburbs.
Or
Yeah,
there's
and then
probably
someone's
properties
like,
that are not accessible.
right, a
because
lot of it,
right.
yeah, that people don't want you there, so that deer just naturally, because of where he was born.
Mhm.
But that proves that state can produce
Given the right
great big
circumstances.
deer. Yeah,
Time is something that a lot of deer don't get. And if you'd see all the deer grow to maturity, you'd probably be surprised at what some of them would do.
Yeah.
If they're not allowed to get there, you're relying on genetics alone that hopefully this deer at 3 looked amazing. He gets killed. Nobody cared he was 3. They just see he's a big buck and he's gone.
right.
But that being the case, are there traits that a buck will develop as he gets older?
I don't think so.
It-
Oh, you mean as far as his movement and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I think
definitely,
yeah, I think they're like Play-Doh to some degree.
Yeah.
They'll mold themselves. I mean, obviously, there's a reason if you jump him 3 times or 2
Right.
times, you're like, wow, I haven't seen him again.
yeah, he's
here.
gone. Right.
I mean, they definitely get smarter every year.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is some do, yes, but they're all individuals. Some deer, we've had some that I don't know how they lived as long as they did because they were so dumb. They're just doing things out in the open. They're visible all the time in the daylight. They're not running at night. And you've got other deer in the same general area that act totally different. So their individual personality or traits or whatever you want to call it could completely change what happens to those deer. And then some will, like you say, they're going to get smarter, but do they completely change? Probably some do, but as a whole, I don't know if that's the case.
So you feel like overall, it almost falls in lucky locations over super intelligence
That's a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're talking with deer that just make it. to
that
get
make
big.
it too large.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the case because, I don't care how smart. There's enough hunters around.
That's correct. Yeah, it's not
And
looking good
especially
for you.
when the does come in heat.
Yeah.
You know, they lose. They
So
lose
it's
perception.
similar to what when we go out west, we're looking for the place where nobody is.
Mhm.
And the same could almost be said about deer hunting.
Well, for those deer to just naturally make it
But
to
but
bigger
here's the
things.
thing: you can find a place where deer or where nobody else is at, but that spot does not always produce.
Oh, that's right.
No.
Not
That's right.
Good
always,
genetics.
Not always. I mean, because there's a lot more that plays there. You know, if there's no food there for them, you know, they don't have no reason to be there. I watched a deer farmer one time talk about genetics, and he said it was king. It was king over food and even age. He's like, if the genetics just not there, it's just
they're never.
And that
gonna
doesn't
be.
mean food's not a big deal, and that doesn't mean age is not a big deal.
I agree with that.
He's like, back to the proofs in the pudding and the eat of the pudding. He's like, I mean, if I've got an 8-point buck that just keeps breeding does, and he makes another 8-pointer, a 9-pointer, and they make another 8-pointer, a 9-pointer, and they make another 8-pointer, 9-pointer. He said they get big as what they are for what they are, but they don't turn into those big, especially in the wild. They're not going to turn into those big Boone and Crockett deer that everybody's after today. So he's like, you got to have the genetics. If it's not there, not every deer, I think you said that earlier, not every deer is going to be a Boone and Crockett deer.
No.
Not every deer is even going to make it necessarily to 140 as a 6-year-old.
Yep, that's right.
And I know that's
Some
hard
don't.
it's hard for people to soak that up, but I mean,
No,
I've
I
been
think that's-
disappointed
what's-
many times watching deer and thinking next year he's going to be great,
yeah,
and then he's just
he's
not.
just not
He's
got
the
it to
same,
be
or
there.
maybe even smaller.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what's the deer that you got? We found the both sheds off of there. They're heavy
Yeah,
and they're cool to look at.
Yeah.
and probably an older deer.
And
but-
there's a good
Oh, yeah.
chance just looking at his antlers and the pinnacle and all
Yeah.
the pad there. I'm
Yeah.
thinking there's a good chance that deer could be, if he's not 6, he's 5 years old.
that's right.
Yeah.
But easily could be like a 6-year-old kind of deer.
yeah. And definitely probably this year, if he's not 6, he's
Yeah.
going to be 6 this
But doesn't
year.
I'm gonna
score.
kill him.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
but
kill
doesn't,
him
but
and
doesn't
be
score
proud
much
of-
anything.
and be
Yeah.
tickled to get him.
Yeah.
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 But when you
he's
break him down, there's not much there.
no,
No,
there's
there's not.
not.
And we
So-
thought when we found the first side, we thought, well, look at this, isn't too bad. Not realizing that we had the big side by far, and then when we found the other one, it was like, you know,
Yeah, but even with the strong side, the best he was going to be was like 140.
yeah,
But
You know,
Yeah.
maybe.
yeah,
right? You know,
maybe.
so, but if you got him, you would be like, man, he's nice.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Some
And-
deer just aren't built to score either.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah,
they
they're
can be
not.
big and they just don't score.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And some of them are scoring machines even when they're young.
Yeah.
We see that all the time. We look at that one, and and we know he's only a 2 or 3 year old deer, but it's like, man, that thing's built to score. He's just got the tine length and the number of tines, and there's something about that where you go, give that deer a couple of years.
Yeah. Do you ever, this could be a little bit off topic, but do you ever, because I've never talked to you about it, do you ever look at a 3.5-year-old and be like, I'm busting him because he just don't have what it takes?
I try not to. No.
Try not to.
Is that more about your tag, or is it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just never, a 3-year-old, you never know what they're going to blow into it for.
Yeah, but when I'm talking about, like, I shot a 3-year-old 8-pointer last year, and I know that could probably twist some people off, but his brow tines were
I was
this
pretty
long.
upset.
Anyway, his brow tines are about this long, and his G23 is about this long.
Yeah.
And he's 18 inches wide.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Chances are he's never going to be a boom.
Right.
he's not.
Right.
He's not.
Right. He's not
And,
going places.
and at the end of the day, I'm a deer hunter, so I'm like, now,
But
there-
who's
there's
to
a
say-
deer in there, and he could fool me too. But there's a deer in there that I'm almost sure is 2, and I can show you video after this, and you may be better and say that is probably a 2-year-old. But he's a 10-pointer that's 17 inches wide, and I just look at it and was like, now that
Protect that one for a year or two.
Yeah, I let him walk by me, and I seen him in January and was tickled when I seen him.
Yeah.
He came out in that field. Well, he came out in the evening. I shot that 8, and I thought, oh, he's still alive.
yeah, he would have scored better than the one
Yeah,
that you
he'd
killed.
outscore the 8,
Right.
the one that I killed, and
Yeah.
I mean, I just like,
Yeah.
and maybe I make a mistake, but I've made plenty of them, and I'll make
Yeah.
more. But
Well, and
maybe
that's
I
right.
make a mistake, but I'm thinking at 6, if he scores 140, I would be blown away because
Yeah, he
he's
may
going to have to
never.
do some really weird stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like, as a rule, and everybody may have a little different take on this. By 3 years old, if they're going to be a giant, a mega giant, they're looking like it. They're not
Carrying some of the
yes,
traits.
they're not
Yeah.
there yet, but they're looking like.
Well,
They're
they need
gonna
to
be.
have some time length,
And
and they need to start on their mass.
Yep.
And,
they-
if they're not,
yeah, they're probably not going to be. And I'm looking at more like if they have that picket fence of tines,
Yeah.
they've got that 5x5 or 6x6 frame. Even if they don't have a lot of mass yet, but they've got like the makings for score later, and they're only 2 or 3 years old. That is likely a deer, not always, but likely a deer that, given another, say, 2 years, just throw 2 more years on there. I don't know.
Right.
He could be the one where that's the one you dream
But
of.
here's my thought: like, would it be good? Because we're talking about genetics, and you'll never get this to happen. It just won't happen. But unless the state implemented a law. But what if we all shot 8-pointers, whether they be 3, 4, or 6, for the next 5 years, and didn't shoot nothing else?
And left those
or I'm
10s
saying
and-
8s
yeah.
and down.
Yeah.
And everything that's 10 that comes by, let him go. Everything that's 11 or everything like that one's got some stickers that makes him a 10, let him go. I'm talking about slick 6 and 6s and 8s.
I mean, if we can have mask mandates, I think we ought to have 8-point mandates.
I'm just saying, if you did that for
Yeah. What would it
what-
do?
well,
Right.
let's say we don't call a whitetail really mature till he's 4, and maybe
That's the first year of
Yeah.
maturity, I would say.
right.
Yeah.
So if you just did it 4 years, if everybody did it for 4 years, you would allow, and maybe 8. Maybe you need 2 generations of maturity. I'm
But
just
see-
curious
but see,
to
I
what
like
would happen.
8-pointers are my thing. I like 8-pointers. I want them to
Yeah.
get.
Well, but I'm just talking about booners.
He's got a few of
If you're
them.
going to turn them into booners,
Well,
How many Booner 8-pointers have you killed?
one.
One.
But
But
he's-
it was impressive.
But he's got a bunch not far off.
Yeah.
Don't let him fool
Well,
you.
and I've seen 8-pointers. Well, like that wraparound buck last
Yeah.
year.
yeah.
He was an 8-pointer at 3, probably 140. And then this year last year he was a 16-point.
Really?
They're obviously
he
the same
he
deer,
looked
though.
similar to
Yeah.
that. His G4s were real short, and he threw out a bunch of trash.
So we're going to have people that hear that and they're like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. What trait stood out so
His
much?
beams
His
came
shape.
around and almost touched in the front.
Okay. Hence the wraparound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was obvious. There was no mistake in that one.
There's no mistake in that.
There are other deer you could question, but that one,
Yeah.
that was a for sure. That's that deer.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of guys that are not good at distinguishing this deer is so and so, or whether you give them names or whether you give them
Right.
numbers or whatever.
Mhm.
There's guys that struggle
Yeah.
with pinpointing this deer is that deer, and even it totally messes up the system whenever from this year to next year. Like
Right.
connecting those for guys is difficult.
Yeah.
And what do you guys look for that, as far as traits, that you feel like that's a significant enough trait that's going to carry into year after year?
It's kind of hard to explain. You either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
But
So you're a savant.
Well,
You're an antler savant.
the beams are a big thing.
yes. Yeah. And they're all different. So the thing is, some of the deer we look at and say, like the wraparound, that was the thing. Like the way it was shaped, the overall beam shape, there's no mistake. That was that deer. But other deer might be, it's got some little weird curve in a tine that repeats next year, or a particular
And
non-typical
I've seen
one.
a little bump that was there year after year, like right here.
Yes.
And I'm not saying they all necessarily are going to have it every year, but I
Yeah.
have seen them. I've got sheds 3 years in a row where the same little bump is in the
Yeah.
exact same spot.
I like deer that have acorn points.
Yeah.
Those are cool looking.
Mhm.
Character.
Yeah.
You hope that you have something so unique in a deer that you can't mistake it next year. But
And
A
some
lot
of them,
aren't
some
that
of
way.
them are hard to tell. If it's
Yeah.
just a basic 8-pointer,
There's a million of them.
there's so many of them. It's hard to say.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
That's why we should kill them.
Well, that's what.
For the
Pin them
next-
out. Pin them out.
Well, there was that one deer a few years ago that had that double beam, whatever it was, and I remember, I think it might have been Witter said, "I wonder how I recognize that next year." And we kind of goofing around, we're like, "Well, it does have 2 beams on that side, but it didn't after that.
yeah, that's right.
It cleaned up and didn't have it." So you don't know. I mean, there are some questions, but
That 8-pointer that put on 16 points, was it an 8-pointer with trash?
It was like this. I mean, it had
That-
short
that
little
little one
G4s
there?
that
They
weren't
put on
there the year
little
before,
G4s, right.
and then
Gotcha.
kickers off the G2.
So still a mainframe 8.
No,
10.
not if he put
it at a
G4s.
glance, it kind of looked
Yeah.
like a mainframe 8,
still
but
kinda
it
looked
did
like
have like that where it had the
little 4s. Yeah.
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 But he
But-
jumped 30
bunch.
inches.
Yeah, a
probably
bunch.
30 inches
Yeah.
in 1
Yeah.
year.
I mean, we don't know.
But how
exactly
does he
what
go in the
taped out.
book? And I know that don't matter to hardly nobody, and it really don't matter to me. But for the scoring system with all
we
that
don't know
trash,
because someone
Well,
else killed him. We don't know for sure to
we
the
don't-
number.
No, but
I'm just saying most of those points hurt him to go in the book.
Oh, as a
yeah,
typical.
as a typical,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
they're deductions.
yeah. But nets are for fish.
Yep.
Have you guys ever entered one into a book?
I haven't either,
I
but
never
I'm just saying if you was going to put him in the book,
As a typical,
potentially,
yeah.
As
he,
typical,
he
it
goes
hurt
in.
you.
If he scores, 160, he goes in as a 140 or something like that because of all the
the
deductions.
net score. Yeah,
Right.
So here's a thought. I know that you do pattern a lot of deer, and we all year long we look at these deer and whatever. Over the course of the years, how many times or how many deer have you killed that were just out of nowhere, never seen before? You're in the woods, you kill a deer, and you ask, "Where is this thing from? I never see this deer before." How
So
often
one that
does
you didn't
happen?
pattern at all.
Right? It just
Mm,
broke
Almost
the mold.
all of mine are that way.
There's
But
nothing
that's a
wrong with
totally
that.
different
Yeah.
style of hunting.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just roughly, I
well,
mean,
the cow pin 8. That's one.
Yep. that was a 150-ish 8-point.
That might be the list. I mean,
That's a short list,
Years
man.
ago, there were more.
Yeah.
I killed one up on Elm River years ago, but it was my first time ever going to this place. Climbed a random tree and 166 walked by. I had no idea of anything about it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Right. But in your area that you're accustomed to watching deer, that
there's-
cow pen buck was
yeah,
maybe.
that's pretty much it.
And so that being said, when you're out there sitting in that tree and you see a deer coming in, a lot of times
Yeah, and
that's
that's
that
the
deer.
thing I like about the cameras is I already know ahead of time if I want to shoot him or not.
right.
You
So-
don't
so
have
you
that
can- you
playing
can
in
make
your
a-
head.
You can make a good decision. If let's say a 2-year-old 12-pointer come in, I've had this happen and killed him.
Yeah.
But had a 2-year-old 12-pointer come in at last light, and you see him coming in, and you don't know him, he's probably going to die.
Yeah.
But if you know him from your cameras, it's a lot easier to back off of him.
Nets are for fish.
Jarrett.
You guys. Tell that to the Boone and Crockett guys when they put him in the book.
I mean, there's guys that are pretty serious about that book.
Oh yeah.
And
It means nothing to
I
me.
could care less, and I do say
no,
whatever.
you couldn't care less.
Well, I could and couldn't, but I
There's no correcting
and
Oh, man.
really at the end of the day, whatever they ought to change it because whatever's growing out of his head ought to somehow get to count. But
Which it does for your gross.
Right. And a
Right.
non-typical deer obviously scored different and all that, and that those things do apply then. But the whole thing doesn't interest me that much.
No,
I like
I
that it
haven't
gives
either,
us
no.
something to talk about. Like,
I
so
haven't even really scored most of them.
Right,
to be
right.
quite honest.
I've got somebody at the house that puts a tape measure on everything that hits the ground within 5 minutes. So my
Yeah.
stuff ends up getting
Yeah.
scored, but it's not
I
usually me
always
doing
score
it.
mine right off the bat
Yeah.
just because I like scoring them.
Yeah. Well, it's fun, but I don't know. I just like that it gives us something when we're discussing. We say, "Oh, a 148." We in our mind have a vision of what that sort of looks like. If we say 150-inch 10-point, we kind of have You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
Right. It's a reference point.
a reference
when
point.
you're
So-
telling somebody about
Exactly.
your deer. Yeah.
So guys that are kind of into that at least a little bit can say, "Oh, I kind of think I know what that is. So that's a pretty good one." Or,
Right. I
you know,
mean,
whatever.
I do that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't care less, really.
There you go.
You're doing
Whether
good.
you know, so you do it as a reference point because people want to know.
Yeah.
Well, how big is he? Well, he's probably in 150s.
I wish the state would keep record of what a deer scores. Like, I wish whenever we call them in, they would require you to give them a rough score.
That would be interesting.
What
It
did
would.
what did that was it? What's his name? Kevin that we had on?
Boyer, yeah.
Yeah. Did he say that originally the Boone and Crockett scoring system was put in place to see the healthiness of the
To
herd?
gauge the
It
health.
wasn't nothing about
Was that him or was that JD?
That might have been JD.
I
maybe
think it
one
was.
of them guys.
Yeah.
But
Although I
it
really
wasn't
like Kevin,
about
but I
it
think
wasn't
it was
about
JD.
like
Right.
you know,
Exactly. Had
I
nothing
got
to do
this
with
big
that.
170.
Yes.
It was about, you know, if we've got this many going in the book that are scoring like this, apparently the food and genetics maybe from that area are better
Yeah.
or something to that nature.
Yeah. That's
It
interesting.
was-
But I think it would be good knowledge to have, because I think it would be nice to be able to say, all right, we've got this many hunters. What percentage of them kill something that's 125 and less? What percentage of
Right.
them are, you know, there's always going to
Yes.
be in that number those that just luck and fall into
Right.
a giant.
But overall,
Every
you
time.
get an idea, and
You would
where
get
they're
a
from.
really good
What
idea.
county produces this kind of deer or that kind of deer?
yeah, it would just promote
Yeah,
more
that's
people
almost-
to come to your spot.
Well, it might, but
Yeah.
Well, down there it's such and such.
Yeah.
They
well, down
turned
there
in-
they're a little
But
pickier.
they kind of do that. They kind of do that now, though. I mean, because if they get entered in a book, you can see where they.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
At least the
there's
county.
Of course,
yeah.
there's hundreds that don't get entered, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's how I've talked to people. That's how they made their decision where they ended up hunting. Like if they're coming from out of state,
Yeah.
they look at the book and they're like, man, such and such county turned in
Right, so many, right,
many booners last year. I'm going there.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
that's right. You know, we were
That's how they pattern their.
well. You can look at it like if you're saying you're going to Wisconsin, you say, well, what counties have produced,
right.
you know,
Sure.
the most big deer?
But the state itself
know.
doesn't do. That's what you're saying.
no,
Yeah, I'd love for the state to do that.
yeah,
And here's the thing. I also ask myself this question. If the state is majorly concerned with the revenue that comes in through deer hunting, why in the world would they not release good genetics throughout the state into certain places to promote that? Like, it
Yeah.
seems like it might be a good thing to do.
That's a great idea to you and to me, but you're talking about a state agency. I don't expect a whole
Yeah.
lot.
If
Yeah.
they started
I mean-
making sense,
I mean,
it's late in the
Kind of
game.
weird.
It's pretty late in the game to start making sense
Yeah,
now.
that's
isn't it?
right.
yeah.
you know, I mean, I don't know. We
And they could.
we were talking before about some of these deer that, you know, make it to get old and, you know, live in odd places or do whatever. And one of the things about that, there's another factor there, and is what people are willing to do to hunt those deer. And so some of those deer make it because they live in a place that's complicated to hunt, and a lot of guys just aren't willing to do that.
Right.
And so I know a couple of years ago, Derek, for instance, he's doing a comp hang and hunt type set now. Correct? Was
Yeah.
it 2 years ago?
Yeah, I've used it for two full seasons.
The year after you fell.
Yeah.
So he took a hard fall.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, no joke. About the same sort of fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. But after that, did that have any bearing on the decision to go with that other type of, or was that just
It probably did a little bit, but
so? Would you say that having changed your setup, and you can describe what that is here in a minute, has that made your hunting, in your opinion, more successful to be able to more universally hunt? You know, if a deer's out in a weird spot that doesn't have the perfect tree to take a climber
Yeah.
type stand or whatever.
I
mean-
I think it's gonna make a big difference. I mean, there's really no tree that I can't hunt. I mean,
Right. even small diameter little trees.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in bushes sometimes.
Right. Close to the ground. You're not even going real high, right? In a lot of your setups now.
No, I mean, if the cover's low, I go low. If the cover's high, I'll go a little higher. But
So
Since you brought that stand in, it's changed, honestly, the way me and Lathan have hunted. Because we went out and we ended up getting XOP.
Yeah.
You know?
Basically, this exact same.
Yeah. It's a
Very
similar
similar.
setup.
Yeah.
What's the one that you guys use?
I've got the Beast.
The Beast.
Yeah.
All right.
the sticks too are beast.
Yep.
Yeah. Boy, those are nice.
And what roundabout, what do they run?
They're expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably the more expensive.
Yeah.
Can a guy get in them for $1,000?
Close.
I think the stand's like $650.
Yeah.
And the sticks are
100 each.
something like that.
And here's the thing. I think that's what a lot of guys are finding. If you're going to run and gun, if you're going to have that kind of setup, you're going to be spending anywhere from $1,200 to $1,000.
Yeah.
Like-
Seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Seems
But
wrong.
then again,
It does.
I
It
don't
does.
mess with regular stands at all anymore.
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
You just need
And I
one
think
now.
it changes the way you think about hunting.
Yeah, I
Like you
mean-
do not go in with the mindset of, I am limited by my tree.
yeah,
Right.
not at all. I mean,
No,
yeah.
it does change that immensely, and
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because you say it changed. It does change, but not really, because we've been notorious for doing that.
We have.
It just makes it work better.
Yeah. We've done it with, summit climbers.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's like, it's never,
I've seen
it's
some of
not
those.
quite the same.
yeah,
it's like we
it's-
climb 3 limbs up and hang a
right.
a base on, and
Throw
one
the-
guy stands on another guy's shoulders and hooks on another base on top. and
Yeah, and then
That's
sets
not
him
that far
none of
from
those
reality.
things
Sets
do
in
we
the view.
condone, but yeah. We do have a question from someone watching. They want to know what are the steps and planning you take when you're closing in on a target deer?
Good question.
Plan of action, such as when things are getting close to happening. Do you have specific steps that you're like,
it's also situational. I mean, I don't know. Every situation is completely different.
are you a
So
moon guy? Or are you?
no, I'm
You're not.
I'm
Is
not.
there,
I mean-
is there a weather pattern that you're like, hey, this is it? I'm
I
on.
mean, I like cold fronts. Everybody likes cold fronts, but I hunt every single chance I get. There's no, am I going to hunt today? Do I want to hunt today? I always hunt if I can hunt.
Yeah.
I may not hunt. I may not go after a specific deer if it's bad weather or if it's hot or something like that. I may go to a spot that I don't have any cameras. Just I'm going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
A lot of guys don't say they don't hunt October mornings. I'm a guy who will. I may not go. I'm not going to go to my good spot.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to go somewhere that the deer are going to leave in a few weeks anyway.
So those are your surprise spots.
Yeah.
Like if you kill, it's going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it may not be a surprise,
But it probably won't be the one you're after, correct?
possibly.
Yeah.
So
What causes you to tighten down on one though? Is it because the cameras have said
Well,
last 3
I don't know
days,
that I
or-
even. I do tighten down on one once in a while, but I don't know that it's even me going after a specific deer. I think I just kill them. I know all the deer.
right.
There's none in my area that I don't know. There probably is, but
not too many.
not many.
I mean,
How many cameras are you running right now?
I'm only running 20-ish.
Even at the peak?
I used to run a lot more, but I'm doing less and less every year. Seems like
Why do you think that's the case?
they're a lot of work
Yeah.
and they're expensive.
Yeah.
that's a fact.
You go to running 50 cameras.
What's the most you've ever ran?
Probably 60.
Yeah.
And it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Every day there's a camera that needs something.
Oh yeah.
The wind starts blowing a limb or something.
Oh, they drive me nuts
Yeah,
on
or
that.
the
It's
weeds
awful. I
grow
hate
up,
that.
or the batteries
Yeah.
go dead. It's always something.
So one thing that occurs to me is and some people may not know, you drive a semi for a living.
Yeah.
Primarily.
Yep.
So when the weather doesn't permit you to haul grain because it gets rainy and you can't get your truck in where you need. Those are the days.
That's when I hunt.
So a lot of the times, the determining factor for you is the days you can't.
Is when deer like to move.
Well, and regardless of that, it's when you can go. And if you're
Well,
going to go, that's it. You
A
gotta
lot of
try
times
it.
in October, I don't get to hunt hardly at all because that's my busiest month.
Yeah.
But, if it rains, I'm going to go. If it's Sunday, I'll go, but yeah, it's.
I worked in construction for years, and guys would start complaining if it just sprinkled, it's time to go home, and whether we did or didn't. And I was like, I can never complain because soon as they pull the lever and it's like we're going home, I'm going to go straight somewhere and set in it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was always felt I let them do the deciding. If they ever said, "What do you think? Should we shut it down? It's getting too cold, or it's starting to snow or rain," and I'd be like, "It's up to you guys." They'd be like, "Why?" Is like, because if you pull the lever and say we're going home at noon or whatever it is, I'm driving straight to my hunting spot. So how can I say I should quit work and
when you're going to go in
when
it
I'm just going to
anyway.
go sit in it anyway? So yeah, that's how I functioned for years.
That's loving hunting.
I know. I was like, I hated to say anything because, they'd go home because of 9 degrees, and I'd go get more clothes
And go
then
sit in the woods.
go sit.
That's right.
I sometimes would be like, all right, I'm going to wait as long as I can and then go in, and
Yep.
try to set all the rest of the afternoon or evening. But
Keep the pain to a minimum. You
yeah.
know,
So would you attribute cameras to the largest part of your success?
No, I mean, I don't think so.
What would you attribute to your success?
Just my obsession with it. That's all I think about is hunting deer all the time. And
Do you strategize those deer and
Yeah.
what the best ways to go about it are?
but it's just so situational. It's hard to put into words.
Do you, when season's coming up, do you have deer that you're like, all right, that deer is like 80% killable right now. These other deer, they're like 50. So I'm going to go after the 80.
That's what I need to do. Like last year, I got wrapped up in one
I was just going to bring that up.
that I had like a 5% chance at.
But it was a monster.
And I had others that I had a 95% chance at,
Yeah.
But I went after the big one that was a small percentage, and it cost me. I didn't kill a buck last year.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that is a failure or do you feel like that's a success though?
Well, I learned a lot about the property that I had never hunted before.
Did the deer end up getting killed?
Yes.
That hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a 200-ish buck.
Yeah.
You got to try. When
Yeah.
you know you have one of those,
Yeah, I mean,
you gotta try.
I've been running cameras for 24 years, and that's the biggest one I've ever got on camera.
But, in the process, though, one thing, we're all excited. So, we know about this deer. So he's going and kind of, updates, day to day a little bit, whatever. And it's fun. And we're all thinking, oh, yeah, we go after that deer growth of there. But in the process of these days and weeks that went by, you missed opportunities
Oh,
at good deer that we would all love to shoot if we had the opportunity. That would have been, I don't want to say easy, but they're high probabilities.
Yeah.
And those circumstances then changed later in the season, and you missed the window of
Mhm.
opportunity. So there's good and bad there.
So cameras can cost you.
But I got to ask you this question though. If you went to those other spots and you felt like, what if today was the day that I could have killed him?
Mhm.
and that's why you
would
go.
it be right in your head? Would you feel comfortable with that?
I don't know.
It's a tough decision.
I mean,
You seem like the type of guy that chases after a deer. And because of that, it's hard to imagine you going after something that's just like, well, I'd be okay with it, but
well,
I
don't get me
wouldn't be.
wrong. The ones that I didn't go after were pretty nice deer.
Yes.
Yeah,
I would have been tickled to death.
on any other season.
Yeah, I would have been tickled with them even last year. I mean, you get 2 texts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but you get tied up in this whole thing.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
get-
thing.
yeah.
Like, oh, there he is. In daytime pictures, that's another thing. Like there was some.
Well,
of
that's
those
what I'm
pictures-
saying though. So you're saying like you're going back there because he's bleeping on camera every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's counterproductive.
Sure.
Sometimes you're better off not to know.
Yeah. Well, and there's you can go from hero to zero pretty quick, like, or vice versa. You could go in there with the 5% odds that you're talking about and kill that deer
Mhm.
and think, well, I made the right decision here. I did this. I put in the time. I gave up those other higher odds setups and I killed this buck. Looky here. I got him.
Clint Harvey made a post about ghillie suits. Do you ever do anything on the ground?
A little, not near as much as Clint does. I know he does
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah.
I did it a
Kills
little
a lot.
bit this last year because I was hunting a ditch bank where there were no trees at all, and it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I don't like being on the ground.
Well, you're a big guy.
Yeah, I'm a lot to hide.
Sasquatch.
I,
Hard to hide.
sometitimes, though, I think it's a mental game because you feel like you're out in the open,
Mhm.
but in their eyes, you're not.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and there's a few things about the ground that are pitfalls too, because if you've got yourself up in a stand, you've committed that's your spot for now. So you're doing it.
It's easy to get up and walk when you're on the
Yes,
ground.
it is. So
Yeah.
now you're sitting there like, hey, if I was over there,
Yeah.
okay, I know it's 4:30, but I want to go up there. And your mind starts doing this to you. Where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
all I have to do is just slowly get up, get
Which
over there.
could be good or bad.
It could be good,
Yeah.
yeah.
but at
I've
the
heard it
same
both
time,
ways.
yes. But the thing is, we don't get committed to a plan then. And some people would say that's fine. Who cares about the plan? But
I think the type of hunter that you are, that develops. So, like, even if you're a ground hunter, you're going to develop those skills to where you're like,
correct.
I could move, but I know better.
Well,
Or
Yes,
or the
Yep.
wind shifted and I can
And I
move where
need
the
to
other
move.
guys can't
exactly.
as easily.
And Clint's really good about ground hunting. He kills a lot of good deer on the
Yeah.
ground, and it's really not my thing. I don't enjoy being on the ground. I feel like I'm busting
I'm just
too many
very
deer.
uncomfortable
Yeah,
sitting on the ground.
Me too.
Clint will sit there Indian style all day. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yep.
my
that's
knees
rough.
would hurt.
Yeah.
I
I
can't
don't-
sit Indian style for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, same here. And I'm just never, I feel like I'm not hunting into I'm up in a tree. I don't know why. That's just the way it is. It's, I guess, because it's what I've always done. And I'm not saying I wouldn't get down to try to make something happen, though I tend not to do that. But just to make a hunt and say, I'm just going to go sit on the ground. That's my whole hunt. That's what I'm going to do. I generally don't do that. And where there are other guys that do and do
The
very
thing
well.
that frustrates me the most about sitting on the ground is just the vantage point.
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
you can
what I don't
see
like about
so much better.
it. Can't see what's
Yeah.
coming.
well,
Yeah,
and,
it's easy to turn around and be like,
Oh, there's
Right.
the deer I've been looking
staring
for.
face to face.
well, that's
Yeah.
the other thing that I
And then
don't
it's
like.
too late because he sees you.
That's
too.
right. It seems like,
even
and
if you don't see, he's so close you can't
if
move or draw.
if deer come through, you just take any given hunt. Deer come through, they pass your location. They have a destination, and they go. It's a lot easier for that to happen with them not knowing about you when you're 20 feet up a tree than it is when you're sitting there on the ground where they can get on the wrong side of you so quick. They can see you, smell you. Things are so much harder to get away with when you're down there on the ground on their level. So I feel like for me, there's a lot of times that a lot of those deer don't make it all the way past without knowing something's wrong.
Yeah.
And that kind of bugs me because I rely on setups throughout the course of the year. And I hate to contaminate an area and mess it up.
I still wonder though if you did it all the time, if
Oh,
you
you would-
wouldn't
yeah.
shift your hunting in a way
Yeah.
that you're like, I know that here they will never know I'm here.
I think you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
I'm very conditional when it comes to ground hunting. I guess I don't know how to word it. Just very conditional. It's like I walk on the ground, and the next one's like I would never sit here on the ground.
Right.
I mean, you can't sit. I shouldn't say you can't because someone would be like, "Oh, I do it all the time." But let me say it this way: very tough to sit on the ground on the edge of a cornfield in December 25th, 24th, when they're all piling the corn and
Yeah.
8 does are going to go past you, or you have to get them past you
to get the buck
to get the buck to you. It's just, that now there is probably a spot you're like, I can move off to the side.
right.
I love sitting on the ground late because deer don't know they don't see me. as much as they do sometimes up in the tree, unless you,
Skyline, right,
because
right.
there's no cover.
Right.
But if I'm going to sit on the ground and try to kill a deer on the ground, even not during the late season, my mindset is I want to shoot him at 40 plus yards.
Right,
a lot of
not up
times.
close.
I sit
Right.
back on purpose, hoping to get that 40, and it's so that I can not be caught off guard. Like if I'm pretty sure he's going to be here, I'll be back there ranging. Like I can sit here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, you set yourself up for a 50-yard shot. Well,
Yep. Sometimes
I can get away
I
with
agree
it.
with you there.
I can get away with
Yeah.
the
No,
40.
I set myself up for success.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I can.
right.
But if
Yeah.
if I sit right on his run or on the main travel corridor, and I'm on the ground, we've hunted in ghillie suits.
Yeah.
It's
and
not
we've killed a
foolproof.
lot of bucks on the ground.
Yeah, and
I mean,
Yeah, for
with
real.
the right good ghillie suit on, I mean, I've had deer walk up and I was like, he's going to eat off the bush that is me,
yeah.
But that's
Get
one
off my
thing.
ghillie suit.
Yeah.
It's one thing to chew on the corner of my ghillie suit. It's another thing for me to draw my bow and shoot him.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've never had a big buck come up, but I've had does come up. I was like, if they come much closer, they're going to nibble on my elbow, But I couldn't shoot them.
Right. Yeah.
You
How
know,
would you pull that off?
It would
right.
be tough to shoot
Yeah.
them,
But
so,
that's what I'm saying. I feel like your tactics change because of that.
yeah.
Like
I used to
based on
love-
how you're hunting, your tactics will change. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why Clint is successful at what
exactly.
he does.
Yeah. He focuses his
mean,
efforts on
It's one
Yeah.
thing to kill a 125-inch deer on the ground. You did something pretty impressive.
Yeah,
But
that's
you
impressive.
go pushing it up into a booner status.
Yeah.
That changes
And regularly,
massively.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
Clint,
a doe on the ground is
Yeah.
tough to kill with
Yeah.
the bow.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Clint really ever hunts out of a stand, right? He's
Very
primarily
rarely,
always on the
Very
ground.
rarely. He's
And
usually
so,
on
I
the
mean,
ground.
and he does well. He kills
Yeah.
deer regularly. I mean, he's good at what he does. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you're right. He's developed his hunting techniques and his skills
well,
around that.
Clint's part deer too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he's
He pretty much is. He pretty much
he
is.
speaks the
Clint the
language.
deer man.
Yeah.
We do have another question. When do you feel you've killed most of your best bucks? Morning, midday, or evening? And that's from Jason Rutledge.
JJ.
Mostly in the evening, but also in the morning.
Does that shift depending upon time of season?
Yeah, most of mine have been killed in November. I
Okay.
mean, I've killed one in October. One big one in October and one big one in December, or two big ones in December. But majority are in November, and which I've had good morning hunts. I've had good evening hunts, so I've never really killed one midday.
Have you ever killed a January buck?
I have not.
Yeah.
You got to get into that.
I would say for me and Lathan, when it comes to patterning big bucks, that's the time when we pattern them more than ever.
I like the late
Yeah.
season. I do.
Yeah.
I don't really pattern any deer until into December.
Till they go
But
back
I don't
on the
run
food.
cameras.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm sitting here trying to think if you looked at me and said, how do you pattern your deer, say for hunting the rut and stuff? I pick like geographical locations because I don't run.
I'm looking for funnels.
Yeah, I don't run cameras, so I don't know necessarily. I may have seen one from the road, may have seen him twice and be like, that's the one. Gosh, I may not know what's there, but I know if I hunt the sign and the geographical spot
Mhm.
that's right, that he'll come through that spot eventually.
Yep.
And then I have to deal with, am I going to let this one go?
Yeah.
Or
And sometimes you only have a few seconds
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
but I
and that-
like that part of it. I
Yeah.
just like that. So I'm like, if I shoot him and I get down and he's not quite what I thought he was, I was like, but that to me, that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
So, and that's not me. We've had this debate, and it's not me hating on the cameras or not. I don't really care. I just enjoy that part of it. I enjoy the turning around. It's like, on my lands, there's a deer.
Mhm.
I don't know if I've ever seen him before. I've got 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Like riding a bull. I've got 8 seconds.
What am I going to do?
to decide
Yeah.
if I'm going to
Yeah.
pick up my bow and shoot that deer. And sometimes you do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do the right thing.
Yeah.
I will say almost every buck I've shot, not all of them, but have been first time sits in a tree.
Yeah. I've had that quite a few
Yeah.
times too.
I don't disagree with that. And that's where the hang and hunt
In the same spot.
all these years. Never had that tree. I got
No kidding.
No.
Trees that were
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
oh,
but not bucks that we've killed in the same tree.
Boy, I've got
Except
Man,
except for the weed patch.
yeah.
Did a lot of killing out of that tree.
And that South Dry Fork spot, man.
Yeah, did a lot of killing out of that tree.
And the North Dry Fork
I
spot.
retract my statement. And that's what I guess I am when it comes to, I guess I'm more of a geographical, like there's places that he's coming through there. If you're there,
oh
enough,
man, you get
he's-
hooked in one spot where it's like
Yeah,
that is their
he's coming
corridor.
through there.
Yeah.
I guess on the other end of what I do is to get down and go after him. So I mean, I hunt the ground, but I don't necessarily set in one spot. I'm a mover, shaker. I've always been that. I don't like to watch them laying out in the middle of a Milo field and leave them
Yeah.
because I may never see him again.
Likely.
I'm going kitty cat all the way out there to him, and people's like, "Well, you'll blow him and never see him again." Well, there's a good chance I'm never going to see him again anyway.
Yeah,
You know, it's just the way it is.
Yeah,
Well, when it's in the middle of November, you don't necessarily know if that
deer
deer's
could
from
be
anywhere.
from. Yeah, he could be from miles away. You'd never see
Especially
him again.
not the way Lathan hunts because he doesn't know that deer's from there or not.
Yeah, I really,
Like-
you know, there's times I know that shed that's out there. I've seen that
Sure.
deer, but boy, I don't see him much. One time a year in a hunt, you know. So I do deal with like I just figured he was gone. Seen him early December, and I thought I've never seen him again. I knew he was probably coming into that late season. I'll see him again. Never saw him again. Walked right in there and picked up his shed. And I was like, well, that rascal's been
Yeah.
around here this
And
whole
he
time.
made it.
And he
Imagine
made
what
it.
he'll
Well,
look
that's-
like now.
I'm grateful for that. Well, Derek just told me he may get smaller.
That's it. You missed your
Possible.
window.
Uh,
Well, it does happen. We see it happen
I'll
sometimes.
shoot him anyway.
You know, yeah. Oh, he's in trouble. That dude's in trouble. You
he
know,
used to be much stronger.
I used to be much larger than this.
well,
I got a feeling that one will be bigger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one looks like he's got the right stuff.
Yeah, he does look like he's carrying the stuff that
Yeah. You know,
what dreams are made of, right?
some of this stuff is just you gotta have fun with it because all these you could stress yourself out with all these different decisions and worry what should I do with this.
Well,
or
I
that.
guess I don't. Go ahead. Let me finish your thought.
Well, I was just thinking back to Derek's got this thing. He shoots 8 points that no one else. Who shoots that many big 8 points? I don't even know. But he's got this thing where every year's like, I wonder what big 8 points he's going to shoot this year or two, and some are really good. So remember that wide one you killed it, didn't even make it out of sight.
Yeah,
So
that's another example of cameras working opposite.
yes,
So
he
I-
should have been somewhere else.
I got that buck on camera the day I killed him at 11:30 in the morning. And the spot he was in, there was no way I was going to go there and hunt him that evening because you can't get in there without him seeing you.
Mhm.
So I purposely hunted 3/4 of a mile away across a road, long ways,
yeah, I mean,
long ways away.
he had to.
I was trying to avoid him.
Yeah.
I mean,
And he just fell into my lap that evening.
well, he had to
I mean,
cross
he had
some
to cross-
fairly visible spots
Yeah,
to get over there.
He had to run across the wide open. He had to cross the road.
Visible from houses, things like, to end up where he was. You didn't expect to kill that deer that day.
No,
You're just
not
going
at all.
hunting.
I was just going hunting.
He kills this deer and he's like, oh, I got him. I thought, you weren't even hunting that deer. You got him. So the deers, it was wide. How wide was that deer? It was good.
22.
Yeah, it's just a good looking deer, shaped real good. So to most people, like their best buck.
Yeah.
And if you're talking like how many 8-pointers do you? So like, hey man, that's a good solid 8. It's like, oh yeah, it's like my third or fourth biggest 8-point. It was like this. If you photographed it right, it looked 30 inches wide. Because it just was that good. And so we started laughing. I'm like, did you hear that? My sister's like, yeah, I think it's my third or fourth biggest 8-point. And then, and it's, we kind of get laughing, but you had a run of 8 points for
Yeah.
many
I
seasons.
haven't killed a big 8 in a while.
Yeah. It's, about time you get with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you need one to kill one, but
Yeah.
there's a few out there.
So if you were going to give someone a tip or a suggestion on what is the thing that you feel like helps you pattern those big bucks the best?
In my area, I've been in the area so long, I kind of know what their transitions are.
So you know where they're kind of staging up and
Yeah, and it's a weird thing. Like deer make the same transitions for generations.
yeah.
Like certain spot out in the bottoms where there will be bucks all summer long. I can almost just count on it. 2 miles away, they're going to be in this other spot. Come like October 15th to the 20th, they're going to show up.
Huh.
And it's not just like this one buck. It's 10 years later, the same things happen.
Yeah.
The same transition.
And I noticed that a lot of places as well. You can count on
What do you think does that?
I don't know. It's very
Because
strange.
they could go 2 miles in any direction
Yeah.
and find some woods somewhere. So what is it that brings that specific group of deer continuously?
It's a really
back?
good question, and so many times.
But there's certain spots that
have
in the
it.
summertime, all the bucks are in these
Yes.
certain spots.
Yes.
And then they filter out.
Do you think it's low pressure areas? Do you think it's
Well, I think in the summer, they, like we said before, they want to be out on a ditch out in the middle of the field. I think they like to be away from does and fawns. So
Right.
usually the places they go is low deer densities.
yeah.
Yep. I'd agree with that.
Um,
Those bachelor groups, you generally don't
So,
see 20 does. with
some
them.
people are probably only getting does on camera all summer long if the one spot they hunt is a place where there's does. But then come deer season, that's the place you want to be.
Right. That
Yeah.
might be it. Yeah, that's right.
When do you think that shifts back to them moving back to those spots?
It depends on the spot. The spot that I'm thinking of in my head that's out in the middle of nowhere, that's just a ditch, they're not going to come back till the crops are starting to come up. April. But there's other spots where they go back in December, into
Yes.
December.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I think that has more to do with the particular terrain
Train
and food availability
Yeah.
in that area, because late in the season, it's all food
It is.
at that point. Now they want to be safe, but I think in a deer's eyes in the late season, there is no safe place. They're scared of everything. They're jumpy, but food is going to make a difference. They'll go ahead and tolerate.
I like this one by Del Martin. I've never heard that one, but I'm digging that one.
Yeah, I figured you'd like it.
I
likes
like to use
cameras
cameras
after they're dead.
only after they're in the truck. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I
I'm
don't
not.
mind that.
I have to reiterate. Anybody uses cameras. Everybody here does, and I'm not against them. And I've been a part of that.
Sure.
And I'm still. If I was with you or around you and going with you in a spot, I would be like, "Well, what's got anything on your camera?"
That's
I'm-
right. You bet.
So I mean, I'm not. I'm just
So, is it safe to say that deer spring, summer are thinking safety? And then
I
once they
don't
get out of summer,
think
they're
so.
thinking rut. And then out of rut, they're thinking food.
I think summer, it's about food, and the bucks want to be in a place where they're not going to be messed with. They may see a tractor go by type of spot.
Yeah.
Do you think they're focused? I don't know that they're focused that much on safety because they'll
I
set and
don't
let
think
a
so.
pickup.
Well, they can hide
So,
anywhere.
yeah.
There's corn everywhere.
Yeah.
The
There's
beans
so
are
much.
Even beans are a hiding place midsummer.
Yeah.
And if growing antlers is taxing physically, as they say, is maybe sometimes more than a doe carrying a fawn. I've always heard that. Don't know if that's true. Then they're
Don't tell the does that.
Yeah. Never carried a fawn or grew antlers.
right.
But they
But-
could be.
I've heard that. I've
Yeah.
heard that, like scientifically, they've shown where growing those antlers takes more
Out of them.
more minerals, more vitamins out of that body, more things out of the buck's body than it does for the doe to raise a fawn.
That
in a
could be.
womb.
Could be.
And whether that's someone out there smarter than us can say that, but even it does have something to do with it. It's one of the fastest growing tissues in the mammal
Right,
race
right.
is anything that has antlers. So they have to take on some food, and in their way of thinking, I don't know what that is, but somehow nature has told them, "I've got to eat." Probably makes them hungry.
Yeah, there's something else there to notice that maybe is the attitude of the deer in the summer is very tolerant and lazy.
Yeah.
They're That's what I say. It's the safety thing. I don't think even applies in the summer, and it may be just the biological stuff in the deer.
Why do you think that is, though?
Well-
That's like weird to me.
I think it's just because they can hide literally anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, but still, early
Do you-
season, there's a difference in those deer. They're way more keyed up.
yeah. There may be something else there, and that is at that time of year. For instance, in the bucks, their testosterone levels are at their lowest. They're not keyed
So
up
they're
and
pretty
charged
chill.
up. Yes, and I think it creates a
No roid rages.
yes, right. a personality, the
Right.
appearance of a personality of a lazy, at ease, all I want to do is eat and be left alone sort of thing. And I don't even think they get all that excited. Like, even when you spook to someone, they're just kind of bound off a little bit. And as soon as they're off in that bean patch, they stop and they just
Yeah.
start eating again.
Yeah, and they'll tolerate a pickup set and watching them
Watching
in
them-
certain
Yeah.
settings.
Yes,
you know,
very often, really.
where you could answer this because you've raised deer in pens, and we had a friend, still have a friend, haven't talked to him for years, but he raised deer, and I don't know if he was there when he told us. He's like, those bucks when that velvet's on, they are chill. He's like, I can get in there and rub around on him, scratch his forehead,
Yep.
push around on him, love on him. And he's like, because we were there one day and he had just taken his velvet off.
Yeah.
Big, nice 8 or 7
He's like,
pointer.
stay away from that.
Yeah, they'll
He's
turn
like-
into a maniac.
He's like, you
Yeah.
see how he's looking at us out of the corner of his eyes? Do not get around him or in there with him. He said something happens
It does.
when the velvet comes off.
There is zero question.
He's
And
like, they change demeanor, they change their actions.
they do.
He
They
says
do.
it goes from me being able to scratch him behind the ear and give
So you
him a
can't get near
sugar
it.
cube or something to like,
He'll kill you.
I want to
Yeah.
kill you if you
Yeah.
get in here with me. And I guess it has to have
So-
something about when the horn goes hard, they rub the velvet
So-
on. Apparently their testosterone.
This is-
And that's kind of when they start splitting up.
Yes,
too.
it is.
Yeah.
It all happens at the same time. All those things that we notice with,
well, think about them being buddies all summer.
Yeah.
and then now,
And then they
I
try to
hate
kill
you.
each other.
Yeah.
later.
so there's a after raising deer for over 12 years now.
Right.
There's something I noticed that was completely opposite of what I thought actually happened with deer in terms of their shedding velvet. People say, "Oh, when their antlers are ready to shed and all that," and I think it has absolutely nothing to do when their antlers are itchy or when they're ready. Those things are very tender all summer, and you can even see when the deer come up and they bump into a little something. You can even see their eyes. It hurts, and they stop and they get away from it. And they move over to a spot where, away from anything, away from the fence. But as the fall, late summer progresses into fall, you notice that their attitude starts to change. And what's happening in them is their testosterone is building. So their attitude starts changing and they tolerate a little more pain each time. And they'll even do a little something where
Lean
they'll,
into it.
and they'll bleed. Those antlers, they'll with another deer even fight a little bit.
Yeah.
Or not for long, but they'll get each day a little more tolerant and a little more tolerant of the pain and stop caring about the pain until one day they just say, I don't care anymore. I want to use these things and I'm doing it. And they'll rip into stuff and start tearing stuff up all over the pen. I say, I'm this based on deer I can watch every day
Right.
and see what they're doing. And you can tell at first when they start doing that, it hurts. They can feel it. That stuff is not
even
dead.
when they're taking their velvet off.
Yes, that stuff is not dead yet.
Because they bleed
can
when
feel
they're
that.
taking their velvet off.
Like crazy. They'll bleed. Like they'll leave a mess.
Do they eat it?
Sometimes they do.
Yeah. I
Like
always heard they eat it.
sometimes they do. Sometimes the other deer will. But
Quit eating my velvet.
yeah. So all said and done, I think it has nothing to do when the antlers are ready. It has to do when the buck has got to the point where he doesn't care that it hurts. He doesn't care what's going on around and what time it is. All this kind of coincides. And once he realizes, oh, I can use these now, get away from him because he wants to use them. And
But that has to teach you something about them in the wild too. Cause,
oh yeah,
Oh,
it's
sure.
happening.
Yeah.
It's happening. And that's when I find that. So say right now we've got 5 bucks that are all buddies right now growing in the summer. So
Mhm.
they're in the pen. The minute that velvet comes off, they are no longer friends.
Well, you have to start paying
Oh, yeah.
attention. to
They're
what-
buckholes.
Yes, they are. And just ask them. But they now don't like each other. They want to use those antlers. The first one to rip that velvet off is the king until the other
Oh.
ones do.
Get
And,
off, right.
and I don't care which one he is. Now he knows he can use them. He's got them stripped clean. All they want to do is use those antlers on everything they come across. And so so in the wild, what we see is, now obviously we're raising them in a pen. They can't get away from each other by miles.
Right.
In some cases it's just, 100 yards maybe.
Yeah.
But in the wild, now we see them separate. Those bachelor groups we've been seeing all summer, now they split up. And some of them, we don't even know where they go. Some of those deer we never see again.
Yeah.
And or that year maybe.
Until next
Right.
summer.
Yes,
if they
exactly.
make it.
If they make it. And so all this that's happening, we've kind of learned watching the deer, some of the deer that we've raised, that there are some things that are happening there. We'd never know that for sure in the wild. There's too many variables and we can't just watch them readily every minute. But we can with some of these things as we raise them to learn a little bit about what they do. Not all things are transferable for what you see deer in a pen, because
Right.
the confinement changes
Sure.
some of their things. But there are a lot of things, like I can tell you this. When I look out in that pen, say in November, and it's 1:30 in the afternoon and all my deer are up and frisky and doing stuff, I guarantee you so are the deer out there in the wild. They are the same animal.
Yeah.
When mine are laying down and won't get up and it's 5-ish in the evening, 4:30, and they couldn't care less about, got that?
That's right.
The deer out there are doing the same thing. And they are the same animal. They have whatever's making them tick, whatever it's barometric pressures or times of day or moon phases and all the things it could be, whatever that is, they are the same animal. And so we can learn a lot about some of those behaviors that way, but it has helped me to in decision making to
Yeah,
some degree.
But seeing them at 4:30 or 5, your decision's already been made.
Oh, it's too late. But I'm just saying it confirms, like I hear this a lot. You'll get several days of lousy, low pressure weather, rain, whatever. And people say, well, hey, they got to get up and eat. They got to eat. We got to go. They got to eat. Well, that's good motivation. But in reality, I've seen my deer for 2 days lay there. Now yes, they'll get up and turn around like a dog does and lay back down. But for the most part, lay there. The food bucket isn't any less than it was yesterday. And they're lazy and they want that weather to pass. And so, yes, we motivate ourselves. Oh, they got to eat sometime. They got to eat sometime, which is technically true, but that sometime could be put off quite a ways. And then all of a sudden, when they decide they've either had enough and it's too long or the weather changes, they'll devour everything in sight. They'll get up, be very active for a few hours, clean up all the food and go. But that holdout can be a lot longer than you think it is, to have them predictably move when you need them to move, say in the evening when you have an evening hunt.
So you built a pen, started raising deer to pattern giants.
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
No.
Not really. But there are certain things, though, even vocalizations
Right.
like that you hear, like, oh, look at that. That's pretty interesting. I might not have heard that very often if I hadn't been that close to them
Sure.
on a regular basis, things like that. But anyway, but it has helped in some
It's
regards.
taught you about their mannerisms. and
It
their-
does. And
Yeah.
how different they are from one deer to the next.
Right.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like smaller deer are easier to pattern than
When
a
you,
mature deer?
you mean younger or smaller?
Younger.
Easier to pattern?
I think they just cover more.
They cover more ground and they make more mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So technically, yes.
So technically,
Yes.
yeah.
And I don't know
and-
if I'd call it patterning though, because I think they're actually less likely to be like, they just get dumb.
Well, but it's not always just young. Sometimes it's in that deer's personality.
Correct.
That deer travels more than another deer.
That's right.
And when that's the case, I would think one that's range is much smaller has a greater chance of getting much bigger.
Yes.
I mean,
And
now genetics is also going to play a factor, but it doesn't take out the fact that when a deer does not travel that much,
Yep. Well, and there's some deer that are pretty tolerant too of the daytime movement. So
Yeah.
some deer, they want it to kind of be shadowed and later in the afternoon before they get real active. Most deer, the nocturnal thing, I don't really believe totally is really a legitimate thing. I think most deer somewhere on the planet are on their feet in the daylight. Now, they may start outside of your area and not get to where you are until dark, but most of those deer are on their feet in the daylight somewhere.
Yeah, but not every deer's range is huge.
No, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
So then now
Especially
you take
in October.
that. Right.
Yeah.
You know,
They might be close.
He may only move 40 yards in daylight.
Yep, that's right. And that might be your chance. And if you're not the guy that has the ability to hunt that spot for that deer, you might not get that deer till November.
You might be getting his picture every night, half a mile away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
you have no chance in killing him.
Well, I mean, that's like that rooster buck that we've got.
Yes.
That deer is killable easy.
Yep.
Like, we didn't kill him, but
No, but the opportunities are there every day.
every day.
So there's a deer not afraid of the daylight. That deer is a day walker. He will do his
Yep.
entire route in the daylight many times.
Yeah.
Not just the peak of the rut either. Like he'll do it in October. He'll do it in December.
And we had multiple opportunities
Oh,
at
we
him,
saw
but
him
it just
quite a bit.
didn't develop.
Well, I think Leroy saw it. How many times from the tree? 3 times. So 3 times. This is a booner-ish,
Yeah.
like solid deer. This is, a 6-year-old good deer. And you saw it a couple of times.
I missed him.
I mean, and they were good daylight opportunities.
Oh,
They
yeah.
weren't like crack of dawn early or super late in the evening.
No.
They were like daytime.
So you're in his core.
Yes, that's the thing.
Well, but his core is pretty large.
It is.
And that's why I think that deer, even though he's a nice big deer, like that deer's range it's a killable range.
But here's the difference. Okay. You say that, but outside of our core group of guys,
yeah, but
he
that's
isn't.
why he's
Yes,
safe.
that's right.
He's
That is
safe
correct.
because he's traveling over a very few amount of hunters in a large area.
That's correct.
That
Anywhere
that makes
else.
it very hard to target him specifically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anywhere else, he would be dead.
Oh, he wouldn't have lived this long.
No.
He would have probably at 3 years old been gone. 4, he'd be dead. Like
Yeah.
whatever, because he was good at 4. And so, but he chose, just like we discussed before, he chose a place to live. He doesn't know where the property lines are, but it just so happens his core area, if you took yours and Matt's,
It's a 1.5 mile loop.
yes,
And the loop is narrow,
yes,
and it's like,
it's a heavily
and it's
wooded.
consistent.
Well, that's the thing too. The type of terrain it is. No one's going to glass him from a mile away.
No,
It's timber, it's hilly. There's lots of places to hide, and most of our pictures of him are daytime pictures.
Yeah.
And we've seen him even later in the season. There he is. Well, Mark had him in front of him there that
yeah,
second to the last day of the bow season.
Yeah.
And then that's about as far out of the range that time of the year as he tends to get. I'd say that's the outer loop. Now, summer,
is.
he'll go way further. He relocates
Yeah.
way further west. But then that was kind of the reach. But there he was. Still safe, though, because Mark's not going to shoot some 3-year-old ever, And so that deer was safe. And that day could have died if he just got a little closer. Good daylight opportunity. But he had moved, and that's what that deer does.
Derek, have you ever come across a deer that you just could not put your finger on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you call him the ghost,
What did he do
Houdini.
that
I called one Houdini.
Houdini?
I got that deer's picture. I mean, anywhere in the township, it seemed like I got his picture.
Yeah,
Is that what made him so hard to get? Is that he was just moving around so
Probably.
much?
I mean,
it made him hard for you, but it made him a bigger target.
Right. You would think he would go by somebody at some point, but that deer was everywhere. But I did find his sheds one year.
Those are some of the more impressive
That's
sheds.
probably my favorite set of sheds.
Those
that I got.
are good. Should have brought those with you. Those are nice. But
Huh.
yeah. But now, so one thing I will say.
So it was hard to pattern him though because
Very hard.
such a large area that he was covering.
He was covering several thousand acres.
So one thing to note about just in general about the area that he hunts is not like some of the places I hunt. And correct me if I'm wrong, fence rows, narrow strips,
Yeah.
divided by big open areas.
Yeah.
So a deer that gets bumped out of this little spot, it might go a mile in one direction before it hits the next place to hide.
I don't have a lot of woods. Very,
So-
very little woods.
So, I mean, that would lend itself to be difficult in and of itself because
Yeah.
you don't know when you enter that little spot to hunt, that deer might not even be within a mile of that spot today.
Most of the time, I think I'm on the wrong block half the time, you know.
Yeah.
But
Huh.
So that's a difficulty in and of itself. And if you make a mistake on him in a particular spot, you might as well go ahead and move somewhere else for the next few days because
Yep.
that, and you can see them do it. It's, you know, whether it be shed hunting or whatever we're doing. Look at those deer take off running, and you can see them running for, it could literally be a mile
Mhm.
in one direction until they get far enough away or to the next patch or tree line. And so maybe that's where they live for a day or two. And so each and every time that happens by whatever means that the deer move off, you have to start over.
Yeah.
And having the up-to-date information that the cell cams give us helps a little because you're like, well, he's been over here the last few days in this general, not
but
so much.
usually you're a day behind.
Yes.
With the cell cameras, you're just chasing your tail most of the time.
Yep. Not as badly as we were with the old card pulls because then
No.
we're a week behind.
Yeah. Or
You know, yeah, right. And so, you know, we were like, oh, I could have shot him 3 days this week in that spot, but
the big thing
You
with
know.
the cameras for me is just inventory.
inventory.
Just
Same
knowing your bucks and knowing, you know, what time of year he's going to be here and what time of year he's going to be there. And because it seems like the time of the year, they're going to be there again the next year.
Almost precisely. That's one of the ways it helps me identify one buck from one year to the next. Like when they're still in the developing stage where their antlers haven't got to where, or if they've changed some, but
So-
certain deer will take on a
I
pattern.
mean, if you know what this buck did at 2, you know where he was
Mhm.
on Thanksgiving
Yeah.
when he was 2, and then he did it again when he's 3.
Start counting on
Probably going to do it when he's
Yep,
4 too.
That's right.
Yeah.
It seems to be the case. Now there are deer that will, and we've chased some that they will do this derailment and they just go and they do something unusual and we don't know. They just disappear and they show back up.
Well, I
And-
think there's outliers throughout the deer herd that
Yep.
they're just oddballs.
Yeah.
I
There
mean,
are-
they may travel 15 miles,
Well,
you know,
and
or
some of
something
the,
crazy.
right. Some of the things that we don't know.
And something could have happened. Yeah.
Correct.
And the
Yeah.
cameras don't get everything.
And they don't. Well, here's
Yeah.
the other thing that
I
that's,
mean, someone could have shot at him.
exactly, or even hit him. And now he's wounded.
Coyote dogs could have got on
Right.
him and run him like
Right.
a
That's
like
right.
a deer,
Yeah.
you know, and run him 5 or 6, 7
Well,
miles. And it may
Have you
threw
seen
his-
the report though of the deer in Missouri that they tracked?
one of them
like-
went over 100 miles?
153 miles. Yeah.
Wasn't it just a doe?
I don't think it was.
I
think it
read
was a
one
buck.
where a doe, they tagged her when she was a fawn. She lived to be 12. It may not have been Missouri. They tagged her. She lived to be 12 and she'd moved over 100 miles
Hmm.
from where she
So when
was.
you
Well,
think that deer lives on
no.
your 40,
This is a different case because
Yeah.
this was a buck that I'm thinking of, and it was over a course of the rut.
he
had
did
tra-
it
he
that
had traveled
season.
153 miles.
Mine was a lifespan of a
Yes.
doe, yeah.
I wonder
Like
how,
this
I wonder
was a
how old
loop.
of a buck that was.
I don't know.
Because that would be interesting to know.
I mean,
I'm sure we can
I'm
look
sure
it up.
1.5
Might do that.
might do that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine an old buck doing that.
It seems like they do prefer a home range as they get older. Now that I've seen deer that will rotate between several, call them core areas throughout the course of the season, even day to day. But like when they get in this block, they tend to be right there. When they get in this block, they tend to be right there.
Yeah.
So there's
The-
some of that.
The older they get, the smaller it gets,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
seems like
It seems
And that
like-
makes me feel like the older he gets, when he makes it to 6, he's harder to kill to me is at 6.
just backwards to what you would
When you're
think.
hunting.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I noticed, and I don't have a real great explanation. I have a theory, but a lot of times,
I thought everything he had was theories.
All right, so check this out.
Ooh.
Go ahead,
Into-
finish his thought. He has
Well-
a theory.
Well, that deer at 4 hard to kill sometimes. By 6, they settle into this I'm not afraid of anything. I'm the boss pattern. And a lot of times that 6-year-old, he can be killed. I don't want to say easy ever.
Seems
because-
like they could be callable.
yes,
Yeah.
They're
when,
subject-
when
it's
he's
like-
the king and he knows
Yeah,
That's right.
And you rattle horns or you
That
grunt,
helps.
he's like, yeah,
I'm going to fix
There's
that.
no one in here that should be here with me, and he lets his pride cometh before the fall type
Mhm.
thing happen.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Wes.
So in 2017, Missouri Department of Conservation funded research project used GPS tracking to study the movements of over 600 deer in Missouri. The study found that a radio-collared buck named N17003 traveled almost 200 miles in a 22 days during the rut, crossing a major river 7 times, an interstate highway, a railroad, 8 state highways. The distance is the longest ever recorded for an adult white-tailed deer and is 74 kilometers longer than any other recorded adult buck
Wow.
that they've ever tracked like this. So what does that in one deer where
Yeah,
he's
but
like,
does that mean he went 200 miles in?
In total distance, just randomly, or he went that
or did he
far?
run 200 miles?
Like, did he distance-wise,
circle.
point to
I
point?
want to say it was like a massive distance. It
It
wasn't
sounds
just,
like it if he crossed several interstates and highways.
Yeah.
I mean, but
I want to say the loop was big. Like it was like a 55-mile loop or something crazy like
yeah,
that.
which is
That's
significant.
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was blown away, and this was years ago. I read that about that doe. She had like totally relocated.
Hmm.
Like she was born in one place and ended up dying in another.
Yeah.
And it was like 100 miles away, and for whatever reason, she just over time ended up way over here.
I would suspect for a doe that's less likely to be the case. The bucks just get nomadic and roam.
It was probably a fire.
Yeah.
But it was
Drove
also odd because I specifically
It's
remember
Bambi.
she was 12 years old.
around. Mother.
Nathan, I appreciate you that you're trying to be serious
Yeah.
and discuss this.
Which
And
is far and few between.
it is, but when we do have
That's
those
why you
moments,
appreciate it so
Uh,
much.
I know. But you've got that knucklehead beside you that just won't let it happen.
Yeah.
Guys, I feel like we're probably at the point we need to wrap this thing up. So,
Wrap it up.
what have we gathered at this point?
That
Bucks are patternable, obviously, because
yeah,
you do it
season,
regularly.
I think is the most pattern
Yeah.
that you can get.
say that again.
The seasons, like
Yeah.
where he's going to be in September, where he's going
Right.
to be in October, where he's going to be in November. I mean,
Obviously, cameras play a major role in what you're doing.
And I've always said for me, it's just, and it kind of went with what you said, just go.
yeah,
I mean,
Every
the old
chance.
saying of walking in the cow pasture long enough, eventually you step in it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you're out there enough in the right, sometimes not even the right places, and it works. So
But let me ask you this before we totally turn this off. But do you ever find, okay, this buck, I've seen him on this path so many times. He goes to this spot. He's been to this spot 10 times. This camera. He's been to this one 25 times. This is my better odds. Do you do anything like that?
yeah, a little bit. I can think of one buck specifically that I hunted for about 2 weeks. And it wasn't even really cameras. It was me hunting, and I kept seeing him, and I would move, and I'd see him again, and I finally noticed there was one tree that he was going by every single time. That one spot was the one thing that he had in common every time. And I moved my climber there that night after dark to that tree. And the next morning I went in there and I killed him. So, it's not all
just
just
a-
cameras. It's
yeah,
watching.
just
Sometimes it's
particular-
making sure that your hunting style.
You got
is
to
being
you got to be
movable.
willing to move.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that would be me. I would have been the guy that sits there and is like, "Well, he's been there, and I went." But that's the same thing a camera does,
Yeah.
Innocent.
you know.
But they're all tools. I mean, what you see is valid information. I
Right,
mean,
it's
it's
information.
it's current.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah, and you
important
just react to the information or respond
Yep,
to it
and the
in one
camera
way or
is-
another.
in its own way. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think that's a wrap for this evening. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Ultra Products and Icon Foam and Gutter. Icon Foam and Gutter has been a major sponsor for this episode. This has been episode 21 with Derek Lee. Derek, we appreciate you coming on. It's been good.
Thanks for having me.
If you guys get a chance, like, share, comment. We appreciate it. And I guess we'll see you guys next time. Next week, I'm excited about next week. Next week, we're going to look at elk hunting, and several of us at the table have applied for elk tags, and we'll know next week where
We should know by Thursday.
Yeah,
Starting Tuesday, they're going to start releasing results. So
yeah,
we should know.
hopefully we know by then,
See
and if
who-
not, we're still going to talk about strategy for elk hunting and talk about how that's went for us in the past. Lathan's excited, so
I like
we're going to get him fired. Going to get him fired up. So if you guys would get a chance, tune in next week for talking about elk hunting. So we appreciate it again. Thanks for tuning in to Up for Discussion. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.